Anthony, it's so great to see you. What's going on?
You told me to shut up. That's what's going on.
Hey, I had no choice. You really deserve that one. Anyway, everybody, hey, I'm Glenn Houseman. That's Anything Melchiori. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of No Vacancy Live. One of the things, Anthony, that I love is it keeps me warm. I'm wearing a sweater today because we got a little bit of that Arctic blast down here in the New York area.
Something. I kind of got rid of my jackets for the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to my comfy sweaters. It's just a little chilly, and I've been wearing my jeans. I've been wearing my comfy sweaters.
Right. So our guest today, for us, it's 17 degrees here. So that's pretty cold. But for her, 17 degrees is much more on the warm side because she's coming to Europe. She's a famed designer that I know all of you out there have seen her work. I mean, she's really focused on sustainable architecture. She's been doing speaking gigs at things like the World Economic Forum in Davos and COP28 in Dubai. It's pretty impressive what she's done. I will tell you, Anthony, I didn't know who designed the place, but the first time I ever saw the Radisson SAS in Berlin, I fell in love because it really struck a chord with me. I'm talking about Yasmine Mahmoudieh of Yasmine Mahmoudieh Design. Yasmine, the first time I saw that giant aquarium in the middle of a historical structure and the juxtaposition of all of that, it really made me stop in my tracks. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Nice to meet you, Glenn and Anthony.
Nice to meet you. Anthony?
No, pleasure. And, I don't want to start off right away with this question, but I'm going to start off right away with this question.
Oh, boy. Here we're at it again.
What was the moment you said, I'm going to be a designer the rest of my life? Were you a young lady? Were you 12 years old? Were you older? Were you a doctor and became a designer?
You're very close. I was about 13, and right. I was really intrigued in design and architecture. And I would go, when we would go with my parents to somebody's house, I would say, oh my God, that looks horrible. My mother was shutting me up and said, you keep quiet. I was like constantly looking at things which I didn't like. When my parents were on vacation, I sometimes moved everything around in our house. So I was very enthusiastic. I mean, I had a few other interests, law and in languages, but I came very soon to the recognition that that's the way I want to go. Architecture and design and creativity, and especially working globally and using languages is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Anthony, I thought you were going to say something.
You're up, Glenn.
I love that you were able to figure that out at such a young age. So many of us struggle to try to figure it out. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do till after college, and even then I wasn't settled. And I've had a lot of different careers in my life. So it's great to see that you were so driven by that. How do you feel that your love of design has really driven you as a human being?
Well, I think, we are surrounded. Everything is design. We forget about it. Everything. I mean, when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, it's design. So it's the visual world. And for me, I have a very high quality of aestheticism and how things look and harmony. And I also believe that it has a lot to do with psychology. Right. I mean, you probably know that I went to different places, but graduated from UCLA in Los Angeles. And the great thing to have been at a university like this is I took other classes like consumer behavior and psychology. And I thought that it has such an impact on our well-being and our lives. And it's, architecture is the feeling of a city. It's what makes the city attractive, interesting. But then interiors is really where we live in most of our time. And it has a lot of impact on human beings. So that has been something that I've always been very fascinated about.
All right. I also understand that you speak like 6 languages or something like that.
Right, yes.
Right? So how does speaking all of these languages inform you from a position of design and culture, and maybe helping you put together things when you're thinking of designs that maybe an understanding of language wouldn't lead you to?
Well, I think, knowing a language is knowing different cultures. You're not a tourist. If I go to Italy, to Spain, to France, I can talk with locals. It helps me a lot in, manufacturers and production companies because if they see you, they speak your language, you speak their language, they're much more excited. So it does give you also a feeling working in countries, when you understand more than, just what you see, and you have a different context. And I think it's just broadening the potential of what I can do.
Yeah. Now you've done like projects, all over Europe, for example, Germany, for example, where you are right now, UK, Switzerland, Turkey, France. Is there a real difference to doing designs for all of these different countries and cultures versus, say, doing a design in New York City versus Dallas, Texas versus Las Vegas?
Well, actually, it's a very good question. I think that the most, the most intriguing for me, the most important aspect in design is that you have a sense of location, which I'm missing so much in hospitality today. Mm-hmm. I always say to my team when we look at, design hotels, I look up in booking.com, let's go into the city, let's take the top hotels and let's look. And then you don't know where it is. We take some other people coming in and say, where is this? Nobody has a clue. It could be anywhere. Everything is exchangeable. We dig deep in. I've worked a lot in Russia, for example, and with my team, we would looking at history of Russia, ornaments, art. I mean, we look into related fields, music, like the basilicas, and why are these shapes, these geometrical shapes, how could they have an influence? So I think it's so exciting if you really have a reference, and then we are in a contemporary time, so you have a new interpretation. It's right. Like, you respect classic music, but you're going into a new, kind of music that we have today. So it's really, to me, at the end, it's the same, because if I, have a project in Milan or have a project in Dallas or New York, they have to be all different. And although hotels are kind of global, they have to have a local flair, and you have to dig into some of the beauty that even sometimes the citizens don't even know.
I've met a lot of people that have enthusiasm for their what they do for their living, but I bet you brush your teeth with the same enthusiasm.
I'm very passionate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's contagious. So when you're going into a project that they're going to spend a lot of money on, and they have really some strong opinions, how do you start influencing those opinions when you make?
Well, I think it's, at the end of the day, I think we always have to work to the interest of the client, which is, if you make the target clients, happy, the investor is going to be happy, everybody's going to be happy. So it's not an ego thing. It's not like, the owner being at a big brand or a big investor. You have to ask questions. Who are we targeting? What is it, what we want? How do we want to differentiate ourselves? How do we want to stand out in a very busy market? What can we do better? It's like in every business, you don't do compromises. You really try to be the best of the best. And then you have your checklist. You can't just say, and especially in design architecture, I think the biggest challenge is you have a lot of famous architects that maybe they do amazing things. They don't care about budget. They don't care about, environment. They just care about, they're going to be in all the magazines. They're going to be very known. Then you have some very functional ones. They're not very exciting. You don't appeal to our emotions. We're emotional beings. So you have to check all the boxes. It's much more difficult to be good in really trying to kind of, have this play between functionality, aesthetics, and ultimately you want to have a successful project for your owner, because then, you have returning business, people, use your places, the owner is happy, the investor is happy. So I think it's you have to forget your ego. You have to really look into what's the common thread that we all are working on from different backgrounds and, having different ideas and wishes. But ultimately, we want the hotels to be successful where the people who are going to use it and the people who are working in it. They're as important, by the way.
Yeah. I think the most important thing you said there, and you said a lot of important things, is it's not about your ego, right? It's about the client and the influence, your experience, your passion will get them to where they need to be if they let go of their ego as well. So how do you today, we just had somebody on recently and we were talking about this in reference to all the technology and all the AI. People think they have a website and AI and all of a sudden they're a designer. When you bring somebody into your business who's a young designer out of school, how do you train them to kind of take what you have inside of you, take what they have inside of them, and bring it out, and not just so easily go on to the computer and let the computer do a lot of the heavy lifting?
Well, I think it's, you have to have a very strong philosophy. First of all, in the screening process, it's about, there's a part of what your talents are, but there's also a part of what your passions are, and do you have the same values? And I think it's about the computer and AI now, which is amazing, but it's something coming much later. In the beginning, it's your ideas, it's understanding, it's a lot of talking, it's understanding feeling and emotions, because like I said, our emotions are stronger than our logic when we make decisions. And I believe the same in hospitality when you decide for one or the other hotel. So I think you have to get them on and give them space to express their ideas, but in kind of making them understand that there is many other human qualities you have to bring into a project, and
right.
we are working for humans, and I think that's very important, and everybody has to be in the same boat.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that talk, but I hear too much talk and not enough in acting. So how are you thinking about creating environments that are comfortable but also prompt human interactions so we can take home those real memories that create the ultimate experience for us?
So you're talking about the hotel experience for the hotel guests.
Correct.
Well, I've been working for over 20 years with multisensory design.
Mm-hmm.
When nobody was thinking about it, we work with scent, with sound. We have we try to have something unique in every single project. That is, when you have been in tens of hotels, hundreds of hotels, you might have a trigger that makes you recall that special place. I mean, we're working with artists, for example, I work with a very famous sound artist that has done all the Calm meditation on the Calm app. We're working with, like on sonic branding and how sound, affecting it. I mean, I've done a project with Penguin Books in London for an exhibition called Sleep and Eat, where I took, some of the classic books from philosophers, and we, like in an IMAX, we had it, travel around the room with mantras that I wrote down, with voice artists. Then we have, when you put sensors on plants, they create music. If you have these little installations in some locations of hotels, maybe a resort hotel, you give some experimental things to hotel guests. There has to be something for me in every project that is so unique that when you go away, it comes even to little things, like instead of chocolate, I say, let's give scent and sound little giveaways, because that chocolate is, all the luxury hotels are doing it, but that's nothing special.
I will tell you, completely unrelated, but also completely related. Studies out there have proven, I don't have the data in front of me, but if you're in the retail environment and the music is something that you like and connects with you, you're going to stay longer and spend more money. So that's that same kind of philosophy over there. I do, Anthony, I do want to bring up her website in a minute, but you said something earlier that I had to write down because I'm curious as to how you figure this out. You want to include things that the locals don't even notice anymore. That's interesting. Could you expand on that? Because I think it reminds me of kind of like when you come into the house and you put the pair of shoes down and you just leave it there and nobody puts it away, and then you just kind of cease seeing it anymore. So it's there, but it's not part of us anymore. So
well, I give an example. Two projects I designed in the Baltic Sea, where my client has 17 hotels, the Zetel Hotel Group, where we won international awards, and it was published in many books. He's been living there for 17 years. I found out that Gorky and Tolstoy have written their books there in the 20s. He never went that time back, I found out that for women to wear a bathing suit in all of Europe was given on that beach in 1928. So we took these pictures, pixelated it, printed it on tiles in the pool area. When you swim, you see these women on the beach, but then it becomes a blur because it's pixelated. So we found out that a contemporary of Einstein, who designed the biggest telescope in the world, because this hotel in the original time was for a short time a hotel. Before then, the Nazis came and all of this. Yeah. And he kind of, crashed a party in pajamas. I mean, there are all these amazing stories, and I talk to people who are historians too, to find, especially when you have some, heritage. and find out. And then we create story. It's storytelling at the end.
Yeah, I when I go over into a hotel, if I take over a hotel and I see the marketing plans and I see the design, it has nothing to do with the history. Nothing drives me nuts more than anything. And a young manager said, how do you kind of create the marketing plan? How do you create the design? How do you talk to designers? I said, I go over to the wall of the hotel, I put my ear and I ask the hotel, who are you? What do you want to be? What were you when you were a kid? And the hotel speaks to us. And those kind of designers like yourself, those are the best designs because you said emotion, right? As soon as you walk in, you feel it, right? And there's nothing greater than being in New York City or being in a really busy city and you open up a door to a hotel or a restaurant, you close that door and you completely are in a different world.
Yeah, I
There's
think
nothing greater.
You've said it very well. And I think if you think about New York as a city and these different neighborhoods who have all evolved, they all have different stories. So you have to bring that story when you are in that location, because that's your story. That's very, depending on where you are. And I think that's the most important part. And I don't see
it's funny. It's funny you say that because in New York City, you say like the 50 states. The 50 states could be 50 different countries, right? Because we're so different. Yeah. The areas in New York could be 50 different states.
Yeah.
Because if you go on the Upper West Side and then you go to the Village, or you go to the East Side and then you go to the West Side, or you go to the Financial District, then you go to Times Square. Those are so different. It's amazing. And a lot of designs, like you said before, there's nothing I hate. Me and Glenn travel all the time. You can go in a hotel, different brands, and you're in the lobby and you have no clue what city you're in, what hotel brand you're in, because they have the same chair, the same carpet, the same smell, the same color, the same breakfast, the same everything. And it's terrible. The only thing that's good is finally everybody's got good beds, but everything else.
But I mean, this is what you are saying is like something like that used to be the idea of hotels when traveling just started. I mean, I've been teaching, I don't know if you know, but I've been teaching 10 years at the hotel school in Lausanne, EHL, architecture design. And I'm also at the Institut Paul Bocuse in Lyon, Paris, architecture design and sustainability now. But for example, when mass tourism started, like in the 50s, 60s, and Hilton was one of the first brands, people were scared to fly. They were so happy to go into Hilton and like close their eyes and, they knew everything where to touch. We are gone from that period. That's gone, I mean, now it's about discovery, it's about experience. And actually the next level is about transformation. This is why I'm also very interested in biohacking and wellness, centers, how we can transform as a better human being in mind, body, soul. And that's where hospitality has a huge opportunity.
I definitely want to talk about that. But Anthony, I got to ask her this question. So I think what you're trying to say is because people are so much more well-traveled now, we're actually starting our travel adventure in a different place when we go to different places, right? It's no longer about having to have a home base of safety because we already are comfortable enough and more global than we ever have been before.
Absolutely. And this also happened because of all the cheap airlines. Before we had, like Pan Am was a luxury thing to take a Pan Am flight all over. As you know, the stewardess were the highly paid, professionals at the time.
And just so everybody knows, basically One Trip, who started that, created the intercontinental hotels for the people that were flying to create that seamless kind of experience there.
Exactly. That's why the airlines were connected very often, like Radisson, to a hotel, hotel.
Right. Yeah, sure. Sorry, Anthony. Go for it. And I know we got to bring up the.
I forgot my question, but I'm going to ask you the question that I get a lot. People say, "Can you go to a hotel and check in and then check out with no problems and just rest?" And the answer is yes. I can go to the hotel and not be worried about everything that's wrong. When things are right, I feel it and I tell everyone. But when things are wrong, I go to sleep and I leave. When you walk into a hotel, does it disturb you when you see something that's really just not correct from a design standpoint?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
And I do sometimes, if I have a chance, I do sometimes talk to the head of the reception or the manager, meet the manager, and, in a nice way, if he's open, tell him, this is my job. And what I always think is, like you said, we do have to give feedback, positive and negative. But if we don't, they're not going to find out. That's why, you know, some hotels have this. I mean, it's not anymore so common, but if you remember, a lot of them had like guest reviews where you could really just tick very quickly. What is it, what you like, why don't you? And I think it's very good to get feedback, you know, on it, because otherwise you are blind and you don't see what people really think.
I remember I walked into the Langham Hotel in Chicago, and there's this beautiful lighting fixture in the middle of the lobby. And I asked the front desk young lady who just came out of hospitality school, I said, that's a really cool light fixture. She went on a 10-minute speech about why the color is this color on that side of the building, why the color is this color on this side of the building, and knew exactly why they designed that piece of lighting. And it was like, it just made me feel connected to that hotel even more.
No, I totally understand it. And lighting is one of the most important elements, I would say, because, you know, we usually live hotels more in artificial light, because during the day we are off and we are more coming when it's dark here back to the hotel. So the lighting becomes so important. And I think it's done, I can tell you an example, 90% wrong. And one example for me, if I can tell you, is in the bathroom, and you can just check it for yourself. 90% of the hotel rooms in the world have lighting coming from above. So you have your shadow. Right. For men, it's not easy to shave. For women, it's not good to put on makeup. So you are in this mirror, and it's, you know, and I really don't understand it. I mean, maybe I had the advantage when I was living in LA. I was doing some production studios for Lucas movie production. And, you know, when you do for these celebrities and stars, they need to have lighting coming from the front. So they're equally, you know, lit, and it's a warm lighting. You want to look good before you leave your room. And that's another point, the color of the lighting. If it's like a cold blue lighting or green even, then you look pale and sick. And I'm sure that almost everyone before leaving the room have a last glance into a mirror and like, you know, how do I look? And if you look, you know, healthy, good, you're in a better mood. You know, again, it comes back to living.
So that's the number one thing in hotels, and we're going to talk about. Matter of fact, I'll back up in a second, but like our lighting, my lighting's overhead, it's terrible. I'm very dark. Glenn looks like he's a Hollywood celebrity today.
I've got two different. I got out natural light coming from this side, and then I got another light coming from that side.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But what do you do in the bathroom from a lighting standpoint to make it look like your best self, like to make the lighting work for you? What do you do?
You have to have a warm Kelvin, like a warm light, because it's not where you're going to have to eat or see. You have to see yourself, but it has to be warm. So it gives you a nice texture, and it has to come from the front, not from above. If it comes from the front, it's equal lighting. And, you know, I always think you should have dimmers so that you can change the atmosphere. If you take a bath, you don't want so much lighting, you know, you want it to be a bit more dimmed lighting. So I think it's really, it has to be flexible and doesn't have to come like the spotlights. It can be a mixed light that you have spotlight and the front, but you can never have just spotlight. And the best is like Linestra or some warm lighting.
So do you put the lighting behind the mirror?
You can put it behind the mirror and it goes around the mirror, or you put it on the side as an indirect lighting either, or you build it in next to the mirror and it comes through the mirror.
And we are seeing more hotels here in the United States do that over the last 10 or 15 years, just not enough of them. So talking about sustainability and well-being and all of that, in the future, do you think for investors, it makes more sense to go in on a property that's all focused specifically on sustainability or well-being, or should it just be added elements that are just part of the stay and not the focus of the entire property?
No, I think it has to be absolutely the focus. I think the ones who are understanding today when, you know, when the regulations are just starting to become tougher and tougher, are going to be the winners. There's going to be green finance in the future. It's going to be easier to finance sustainable projects, from big building projects, you know, to small ones. And I think we're not even talking anymore about, you know, break even. We're talking about climate positive. You know, I mean, net zero is not enough. And I think, I mean, one of my passions is to have with my team researched over 20 years over 300 sustainable materials that absorb CO2, that are beautiful, that are antibacterial, anti-odor. We have so many amazing materials that can replace concrete, you know, and they are absolutely stunning. And I think that it is going to be an absolute advantage if any hotelier today is understanding that says it's not an option, it's a must.
What's one material, fabric, stone, that you've come in contact with recently that was like, wow, that's different. I didn't know that existed, and you're starting to use it more and more.
Well, one of the materials that I'm really excited about is hempcrete, which comes from cannabis, and they're hemp blocks. They could replace building blocks of concrete. They
Right.
have the best temperature. They reduce 50% energy cost inside buildings. They give you fresh air. They absorb CO2. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I'm working with a company in Italy outside Milan, and they are one of the biggest one for these hempcrete blocks. And you can even spray it in high rise.
Wow.
So you can use it for outside, or you can use it for inside. And I've been in these places. You have an air quality that you will not have. It's fire resistant. It's for the humidity, temperature, adjusting, and it's absorbing CO2. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating.
And no, Anthony, it's not psychoactive, so people are not going to be chipping away at the.
No, I know a lot of
Well,
people ask these questions, but in the past, it's in historical times, actually, cannabis was used for silk, for fabrics, for everything. It's just, I mean, that's a story by itself.
Yeah, look up William Randolph Hearst and demonizing it through his newspapers because he owned wood forests as to see what happened there. Anthony.
True story. It's fascinating, by the way. Design is supposed to make you feel smarter, sexier, and cooler. Talking to you makes me feel smarter, sexier, and cooler.
Thank you.
Talking to you, being around you, listening to you, I just want to be better.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's. I think we should take a quick look at this website because Anthony thinks it is absolutely beautiful. So, Anthony, you want to lead the discussion?
Yeah. So take us through these pictures. Some of these pictures.
I'll go through the all projects. There we go. How about hospitality?
How about that? Since we're talking about hospitality.
Yeah, baby. Here we go.
Yeah, if you go in Strandhotel Atlantic, that's the one I just was talking about, where we used all sustainable materials, and
Really?
it's like it's completely redesigning very tired hotels that we changed from outside, from inside. The materials are all the fabrics are like either recycled fabrics or fabrics that absorb CO2, and we have like materials like reclaimed wood instead of normal wood. And I think if you go a bit down, you see these pixelated on the right side. You see that's Tolstoy, behind your bed.
Yeah, there we go.
They're appearing a bit, and it's like pixelated, and there's indirect lighting, and then you have the quotes above your ceiling. So when you go to sleep at night, you have a very positive, sentence that triggers you into sleep.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes, exactly. I mean, that's just one example. And the lighting, as you see, even the corridors, it's beautiful indirect lighting.
Yeah.
The wood is a bit like whitewashed because you have the sea opposite, and when you have like the kind of walkways by the sea, it's all in wood, and the wood is washed out from salt water. So it's quite, again, taking also nature into it and biophilic design. I mean, this is not a picture. This is the sea you see there in the background.
When you get a new project, a big project that's kind of daunting, do you need to go for a walk? Do you go, what do you do to just be by yourself to say, okay, before I get my team, before I start writing anything, I'm going to clear my mind and I'm just going to absorb this space? How do you do that?
Well, I always have to see the site. So I always come to visit the location where I'm invited to come to. And it's actually what you said. I stroll around, I look into the city, I walk by myself. I try to get a feeling of, what the city is. I try to find books on the history of it. I try to talk to people, even in shops. What has changed here? What are you missing? What has done, if there's so much history. So you have to you have to talk to locals, and you have to experience what is the air like? Where's the wind coming from? How dark is it? When does the light go down? And I mean, it's all these things. What is already the picture of the city? What is it what you can contribute to make it more beautiful? And then, what is the impact you can have on people to attract them to come in and to want to come back over and over again? And what is absolutely the connection to nature? I mean, I love nature. I love trees. I love leaves. Nature gives you the best color scheme in the world. You don't need anything else. Have you ever seen flowers that don't match, that you say, oh, that's kind of weird? It doesn't, because they're natural. And I think you have to look into natural. We have so much beauty in our world that we have to take into our projects.
Tell us about a moment where you had that moment where it's like you couldn't wait to get to work because you figured it out. And then you speak to someone and they thought you were crazy, but you talked them into it. And then when they saw it, they were like, oh my God. Was there one moment that stands out where you really had to be a little bit more forceful and say, you have to trust me here, and then all of a sudden it was exactly what you wanted?
Well, there are many projects, but I take one project. It was in Verbier in the Swiss Alps, the Nevi Hotel. I think it's on my website. It's a hotel in the Alps, and usually my client who has never done a designer and never used a designer, and he had 3 hotels, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. This was supposed to be a lifestyle hotel from a really totally ugly 2-star hotels. The Nevi, it's Nevai, and I think you should find it on my site.
I'm looking. All right.
And the thing was that he was thinking it's going to be like all dark woods because hotels in the ski. I said, well, what else do you see beside the wood? You see snow that's white, and you see snowflakes, and you see the sun hitting it, and you have this crystal. So I used elements. First of all, it was a low ceiling space with Korean, a reception desk cut out.
I almost used the reception desk as my background picture today.
Exactly. And then on the right, the reception, you see it's like icicles. It's they are cut out into the Korean, backlit as the reception. And then you have these
this one up just so everyone can get a better look. Look at that.
Exactly. So he literally called me, I remember, and he said, oh my God, I'm not sure we're going to do this. This is so different than I've ever seen. This is so different. And he was totally shocked. I calmed him down. I said, listen, I mean, I'm not talking when he saw the final product, but he saw the design. And then then we won many awards. He was the happiest man in the world later, but he was so scared because it was something he hasn't seen before. And the lighting and how everything worked together, and how we, like you gave the example about the lighting, everything was, I could explain every single thing, why we did it this way. And having a kind of low ceiling, how do we get an idea to have a higher ceiling than it is? The fireplace that you don't see, the material that we used has glass in like split glass, and it has the sparkle as the sunlight when it hits the snowflakes. So it was really like an experience from taking from outside. Yeah, exactly. When you have
but when you're separating yourself from the pack, whether it be in your business, whether it be design, whatever it is, you use the word that's very interesting. He was scared. I think greatness, if you're not scared, you're not going to achieve greatness. And that he trusted you enough. If he trusted you enough, that says a lot about him as well. And we're only spoken for a half hour, but in a half hour, I wouldn't want anybody else in the room. Matter of fact, I'm making sure I call you in the next project I have, because your ego is not involved. It's you want to get everything right. You want to do it for the client. You want to do it for the world, for just good karma, and you can just sense that.
I mean, I have a little anecdote to finalize this. Maybe I was designing the first ever design hotel for Radisson. That's a long time ago in Copenhagen, from a famous architect of the 50s, Arne Jacobsen. And Mr. Ritter, at the time, the president, he said to me, Mrs. Mahmoudieh, I want to tell that 80% love and 20 hate. I mean, that was literally his brief. And this is what we did. I mean, all the Scandinavians thought, who's this woman, half German, half Iranian, designing our kind of iconic hotel. It won so many awards. I used all the ideas of Arne Jacobsen, this one. Like in the 50s, you have this colored lighting. It still has the form of it, but I put functionality in. For example, all your hotel brochures are under that, the glass on the top of the desk. And then it has this kind of shape that you have of the 50s. Yeah, that's like functionality. So people usually throw all the brochures on the floor when they come into a room. Here you see it, but it's true glass. But then all the lighting that changes the color behind, And I mean, it was, the people were in love, the Scandinavians, because it has a Scandinavian look. We use the oak wood, But I took it to another level. So I updated the time of the 50s, but it has a lot of ideas of the 50s and a new interpretation.
What people understand about what you do, not only is the inspiration and creativity, but you have to work within a budget. And
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
so what happens on those compromises? I would
Well,
imagine, like, how do you handle that?
I think, first of all, I belong to the designers and architects. I always want to have a realistic expectations. I mean, there are many colleagues, I have to say, that just say, oh yeah, I can do it. And then you go over budget and then you are stuck. I don't like this. If somebody wants a Rolls Royce, but has a a Fiat 500 budget, it just doesn't work. I mean, and you have to be upfront telling him, because who you want to attract to is also going to understand. I've never had a problem, and I don't think that spending the most amount of money makes a great project. It's clever spending. It's how do you put your emphasis. I mean, we focus today on 4 and 5 star hotels, mainly luxury, but I've done a lot of lifestyle hotels, and they don't have the same budget as a 5-star hotel. But if you have a clever idea and you're innovative, and hotels have repetitions, so maybe the rooms can have something a bit more neutral, and it's not as much work as the lobby space where the people are spending more time, or the restaurant. So it is the allocation of the budget, and you have to work with the budget because I see myself, I'm working my own hotel brand, looking for investors now, called the Y Hotel. Maybe you heard about it.
Mhm.
I'm looking for investors into my new concept. So I could see myself being on the other side, and I totally understand that you have to make it financially feasible. Otherwise, there's no sense. But it's still the allocation of the budget, how it's put. So often there's a lot of money spent on engineering badly done. I've seen this over and over again, and I'm not going to name the big brands that have done it. And then at the end, there's very little left for interior design. But that's what the guest is going to experience. He's not seeing what happened behind the walls with the air conditioning that has been done wrongly and had to be redone. So it's a clever allocation of budgets.
It's interesting. I was just in a project that I was brought in late, and I walked into the room. It's in Florida with all the humidity, and the air conditioning was too big for the room, and they have to rip it all out. And it's just amazing to me in this day and age that happens time and time and time and time again. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I'm speechless myself. What I've seen over my my experience on so many projects. It's sometimes shocking, and I find it also very sad that there's a lot of wasted money on things that could have been avoided. But that's why it's so important that you really choose who you work with in all your team, from engineering to every part of the team. As I said before, if you want to be successful, and also to start from the beginning, because sometimes people think, okay, I do the construction and then I think about the design, or no, it doesn't work like this. Everything has to be done in the beginning. I mean, now we happen to be architects and designers, but we do 80% interior architecture and 20 schematic architecture, giving a lot of innovative ideas. But you have to be there from day one, and then the owner gets the biggest benefit.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of times, if somebody hires you or somebody hires me as a consultant, they don't ever see the mistakes that we avoided for them, right? And that sometimes can be frustrating, because you're sitting in a room years later and everybody's excited, but I'm like so many things are working well because you avoided them. I sometimes brought onto projects too late, and then I'll get the blame because it's like, well, I didn't do that, but I'm not going to throw somebody under the bus. But I was talking to a potential client yesterday, and he's building a hotel, and he said, well, we'll bring you on later. I said, that's fine. You can bring me on later if you want to. It's just going to cost you a lot more money fixing all the things that you're going to break, and it's because what you do, especially in what you do, it's so nuanced. Like when you get into a room and you close the light, and where the switch is, and where the headboard, and where the lighting under the bed, and where, like, everything is so nuanced. You've never been in that hotel room before. You want to feel like you're at home. And if you don't feel it to your toes on how everything's got to be curated for that guest, and that takes a lifetime of mistakes and experience.
Absolutely.
And
so often, you go into a hotel room and you don't know how to turn off the lighting, which is so, I find it like terrifying.
Or turn it on.
I always say to my whole team, you have to imagine you are a little child and you're going into this room and you have to find your way without any explanation. And that, by the way, is the same for me when you enter a hotel and you have to find your way to the concierge. You're not in an airport having to read like signs. there has to be a flow, the flow that takes you somehow subconsciously. It has to be a subconscious influence that you create on how the movement in the hotel has to be. And that's something that I find, that's where it all starts with. That's the beginning.
Right, and they make it intuitive. How many times have we walked out of our hotel rooms and we walked the wrong way for the elevator?
Yeah.
Exactly. Every time. I think that's just part of the.
That has also to do when you have very long hotel corridors with triggers, visual triggers. What can you create that you understand distance, that I mean, there's so much, and that's why I have to come back to the fact that psychology plays such a role to understand how the human brain works and how something gets triggered. It looks like so easy. You design, you have an idea, you're creative. No. There are so many other related, specialties, I would call it, or interests, which make great design.
I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm going to make a statement because I was going to ask you the question, but I'm going to make a statement. You love what you do more today than you did yesterday.
Yes. I find that a lifetime is too short to do all I want to do. That's how I feel every single day.
That is absolutely amazing. All right, we are over time. I feel like we could speak forever. Yasmine Mahmoudieh, thank you so much. How can we learn more about you, your hotel venture, all of that kind of stuff? It's shameless plug time.
Well, the best to connect to me is actually on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active under just my name, Yasmine Mahmoudieh. My websites are, impactdesignnow.com and mahmoudieh.com. I mean, we didn't talk about, I'm doing a lot in 3D printing from recycled plastics and, going into new technology and all of this.
Come back and we'll talk all about that stuff another.
We'll do it another time. But the best, connect to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, but LinkedIn is my, preferred, and then we can connect. Yeah.
Same here. Yasmine, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Awesome. That was really terrific. So there's so many hidden nuggets in this one, everybody. You're going to have to download it and listen to it again. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And for video, hey, just watch it wherever you go. Just like Yasmine, we live and breathe on LinkedIn, plus Facebook and Instagram and all of those other places. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and we'll be back tomorrow with another live show. In the meantime, remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
See y'all tomorrow, people.